The rise and fall of Aaron Rodgers. 4 plays. That's all it took to shatter the New York Jets' dream season. But Aaron Rodgers' fall from NFL greatness did not begin on that September night when his Achilles snapped. It was years in the making, driven by ego, talent, and a career that went from brilliance to controversy, from draft day humiliation to Super Bowl glory, from MVP dominance to becoming the quarterback no team wants to touch. This is the rise and fall of Aaron Rodgers. Before Aaron Rodgers became a household name, he was just another kid with a dream. But he didn't get a Division I offer out of high school because coaches thought he was too skinny and not strong enough. So instead of playing in packed stadiums, he ended up at Butte Community College, throwing passes in front of a few hundred people. Rodgers dominated at Butte, leading the team to a 10-1 record at a conference championship. What stood out about Rodgers was his accuracy and arm talent. And it wasn't long before the University of California took notice. So in 2003, Rodgers transferred to Cal and took over as the starting quarterback. That was when Rodgers stopped being overlooked and started turning heads. At his first season, he led Cal to a 7-3 record as a starter, throwing for 2,903 yards, 19 touchdowns, and just 5 interceptions. Then in 2004, he took it to another level. He led Cal to a 10-2 record and a spot in the Holiday Bowl, but they lost to Texas Tech 45-31. Even with that loss, Rodgers finished the season with 2,566 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, and just 8 interceptions, cementing himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Going into the 2005 NFL Draft, many thought he could be the first overall pick. And guess which team had that first pick? The San Francisco 49ers, Rodgers' childhood team. It was supposed to be a dream come true, but on draft day, everything fell apart. Then, team after team passed on Rodgers. Cameras kept cutting to him in the green room, forcing a smile while other players celebrated. The wait felt endless. Nearly 5 hours passed before the Green Bay Packers finally called his name at pick number 24. You could see it on his face. He wasn't going to forget this moment. Every team that passed on him had just made a mistake, and he was about to spend the next 2 decades proving it. Now, landing in Green Bay wasn't exactly stepping into an easy situation. The Packers already had Brett Favre, an absolute legend who wasn't planning his retirement party anytime soon. So for 3 long years, Rodgers stood on those sidelines watching and waiting. It wasn't like those feel-good movies where the veteran takes the rookie under his wing. Favre famously said, "My contract doesn't say I have to get Aaron Rodgers ready to play. Hopefully he watches me and gets something from that." But Rodgers didn't waste those years. He studied everything. With the help of quarterbacks coach Tom Clements, he rebuilt his throwing motion, tightened up his release, and worked on every little detail. When Favre left in 2008, Rodgers finally got a shot. Rodgers wasted no time proving he belonged, throwing for 4,038 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. But despite his efforts, the Packers stumbled to a 6-10 record. It was a tough season, but one that hardened Rodgers and set the stage for what came next. Because in 2009, Aaron Rodgers truly arrived. With another year under his belt, he sharpened his game, cutting down on mistakes and elevating his play. He finished the season with 4,434 yards, 30 touchdowns, and just 7 interceptions, leading the Packers to an 11-5 record and a playoff berth. Suddenly, the league was on notice. This wasn't just Brett Favre's replacement anymore. This was a quarterback who could make every throw, who could extend plays with his legs, and who had the football IQ to pick apart even the most complex defenses. By 2010, just his 3rd year as a starter, Rodgers was ready to take the next step. He led the Packers to the playoffs as a wild-card team, but few expected them to take a deep run. Little did they know, Rodgers was about to deliver a postseason performance for the ages. Game after game, he played like a man possessed. His throws were laser precise, threading needles between defenders in ways that seemed impossible. This masterclass in quarterback play carried the Packers to Super Bowl 45, where Rodgers faced off against Ben Roethlisberger. But on this night, there was no doubt who the better player was. Rodgers outdueled Big Ben, completing 24 of 39 passes for 304 yards and 3 touchdowns. At just 27 years old, Rodgers was a Super Bowl MVP. and the new face of the NFL. The kid who had to wait his turn, who fell in the draft, who spent years on the bench, had silenced every doubter in the most empathetic way possible. But this was just the beginning. From 2011 to 2016, Aaron Rodgers was not just playing quarterback, he was redefining it. Over those 6 seasons, he threw more than 24,000 yards and 197 touchdowns, all while maintaining elite efficiency. His 65.1% completion rate and 104.4 passer rating were among the best in the league during that stretch. In 2011, Rodgers put together one of the greatest quarterback seasons in history. He passed for 4,643 yards, 45 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions, completing 68.3% of his throws. The Packers went 15-1, and his 122.5 passer rating was the highest single-season mark for a starting quarterback at the time. That year, he won his first MVP award. True to everyone's prediction, Aaron's second MVP award came in 2014 after another stellar season. Rodgers threw for 4,381 yards, 38 touchdowns, and just 5 interceptions, leading the Packers to a 12-4 record. That year included a legendary performance against the Chicago Bears, where he threw 6 touchdowns in the first half, finishing with a perfect passer rating. But stats only tell part of the story. Rodgers was making throws that defied physics and logic. One of the most iconic moments of his career came in 2015 during the Miracle in Motown. With no time left on the clock, Rodgers launched a 61-yard Hail Mary to Richard Rodgers, sealing a stunning game-winning touchdown against the Detroit Lions. Yet for all his brilliance, something was missing. The Packers made the playoffs every single year during the stretch, but that second Super Bowl ring kept slipping through his fingers. And this is where things got complicated. Rodgers' competitiveness, the very thing that made him great, began to show his darker side. The frustration of playoff heartbreaks, particularly the 2014 NFC Championship collapse against Seattle, hit hard. He started clashing with his coach over play calling and openly expressing his dissatisfaction with the team's direction. That said, Aaron Rodgers was still at the top of his game. Behind the scenes, however, trouble was brewing in Green Bay. The Packers eventually fired head coach Mike McCarthy after years of reported tension with Rodgers. But as the saying goes, be careful what you wish for. Then came Matt LaFleur, a young, offensive-minded head coach with a fresh system. At first, Rodgers was skeptical of the new approach, which emphasized structure over improvisation. Despite his doubts, he adjusted quickly and led the Packers to a 13-3 record in 2019. Then, just as he was finding his rhythm, the Packers front office dropped the bombshell. In the 2020 NFL Draft, they shocked everyone by trading up to select quarterback Jordan Love in the first round. The move sent shockwaves through the NFL. For Rodgers, it must have felt like a punch to the gut. This was not just about bringing in competition. To Rodgers, it was personal. He had been in Jordan Love's shoes before, the young quarterback waiting in the wings. Now, he was the one being replaced. There was one key difference. When Brett Favre faced the same situation, he had multiple Super Bowl rings. Rodgers had only one, and the time was running out. But if the Packers thought drafting Jordan Love would motivate Rodgers, they underestimated him. They did not just spark a fire, they fueled an inferno. Rodgers responded in the most Aaron Rodgers way possible by torching the entire league. He threw for 4,299 yards, 48 touchdowns, and just 5 interceptions. Led the Packers to a 13-3 record and secured his third MVP award. The following season, he was just as dominant, winning his 4th MVP in 2021. Yet, even as Rodgers was rewriting the record books, his relationship with the Packers was falling apart. The tension was undeniable. Rodgers began skipping off-season workouts, a clear signal that all was not well in Green Bay. In search of clarity, Rodgers took a 4-day darkness retreat. An introspective journey meant to help him decide his future. Shortly after the bombshell drop, Rodgers wanted out. The standoff reached its breaking point in early 2023. Green Bay, looking toward the future with Jordan Love, decided to part ways with a 4-time MVP. For the Jets, this was the move that they had been waiting for. A team that had not made the playoffs since 2010 finally had a proven elite quarterback. Rodgers embraced the fresh start, bringing along familiar faces from Green Bay, including wide receivers Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, offensive lineman Billy Turner, and offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett. The Jets were not just getting a quarterback, They were building an ecosystem around Rodgers. From that moment he arrived in New York, expectations skyrocketed. The Jets handed Rodgers significant influence over personnel decisions, a move that raised eyebrows across the league. But when you have a 4-time MVP, you do whatever it takes to keep him happy. Fast forward to the opening night at MetLife Stadium. It was supposed to mark the start of something special. The stadium buzzed as Rodgers jogged onto the field in his Jets debut against the Buffalo Bills. Then, in an instant, it all came crashing down. 4 plays. That was all it took for the dream to turn into a nightmare. Rodgers dropped back, planted his foot, and felt a pop as he was sacked by Leonard Floyd. He crumbled to the turf, and the collective gasp from the crowd said it all. The diagnosis was brutal, a torn Achilles tendon. Just like that, Rodgers' season was over before it had begun. Rodgers' rehab was grueling, and his return to the field came with questions. Could he still move the way he once did? Could he still make the throws that had defined his career? No one knew for sure. Off the field, Rodgers continued making headlines. His weekly appearance to the Pat McAfee Show became a must-watch spectacle, often stirring controversy. One of the most talked about moments came when Rodgers made a remark that appeared to insinuate late-night host Jimmy Kimmel was linked to Jeffrey Epstein's unsealed documents. The comment quickly went viral, leading to public backlash and a heated response from Kimmel, who threatened legal action. Amid the distractions, the Jets leadership grew concerned. They wanted their quarterback focused on football, not on fueling controversy. But the biggest concern was on the field. Could Rodgers still perform at the level the Jets had hoped for? Apparently, the Jets did not think so anymore. As we wait to see if Rodgers has one last act left in him, his career stands as a powerful reminder in the NFL. The line between legend and cautionary tale is razor thin. So, was his story one of triumph, or does his fall overshadow his rise? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on exciting NFL content added weekly.